الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه ما بعد. On this day, which is the 13th of December, here in Philadelphia, and the purpose of this interview is to explore some of the history of Islam in Philadelphia, both from a personal perspective and an institutional perspective. I like to start these interviews by having the guests introduce themselves, talk about some of their early life. Were they born in Philadelphia? Did they come here later on? And what was their journey to Islam here in Philadelphia? So, Imam Shamsuddin, Jazakallah khairan, if you could start with that.
You're very generous in laying out those many things I can draw from. However, I think that, well, first of all, my name is Shamsuddin Ali. I grew up in Philadelphia, but I was not originally from Philadelphia. My family is originally from Georgia. And I think I was about 4.5 when I came to Philadelphia. I lived in South Philly. I lived on South 6th Street when I first arrived in Philadelphia. Shortly after that, my father purchased a house on a little street called Random Street, which is right below 6th. And I went to Murdoch School, William Murdoch School, which is at 5th and Bridgewater, Bartlett Junior High, which is at 11th and Catherine, and Bach School, William Bach, I think, which is at 8th and Memphis. I attended art schools, Fletcher art schools, at that time Catherine Street, and I just grew up in Philadelphia like everyone else.
Why did your family choose to come to Philadelphia? Was it something specific about the city?
No, I think, well, I knew my father said about that. He wanted to take, my father ran a farm in Georgia and was with his family for years. As a matter of fact, you can trace back them having possession of their homes. As a matter of fact, they had more acres than any other blacks in Georgia at the time. And he ran that farm for his father's farm. He was actually a teacher for mathematics. His mother was a nurse. And he was just a kid in most instances during the period of time. He was over the son, so he had that kind of charge on him. All of his brothers and sisters went to school, and they went to universities and stuff like that, but he did not. But from my observation, what I knew of his life, he was always more developed than all of them. As a person, as a human being, insightful understanding, temperament, mannerisms, he's a master. The only one I would say was maybe having the age of him was my mother. In regards to self-control, managing himself, and analytical outlooks, she was very, very unique lady. But anyway, that didn't so much help me. I mean, it helped me to the point that my parents were saying, it still needs you to do the work. That you can do so whatever you are can become to the degree and a lot of this reality. So growing up in Philadelphia was no different for me than anyone else from Philadelphia. I knew exactly nothing about humanity in the general sense. Meaning, when I said general sense, I mean in the sense of what was affecting and generating and forging the humanity in the society I was in. I was not privy to understand it or even have inclinations to even look at it like that. And I don't think anyone else probably had much more than that going for them. And I suspect that even the ones that have been highly reported and have been highly involved in those time periods doing whatever they could do, such as what we can read and study and find in the life of people like I think they were great people with energies and they wanted to extend into the world. And those things were not based on any particular driving force that they knew of. So I don't suspect I had any driving force either, no more than them. So they were great people. Now, being exposed like that and being in the streets of Philadelphia like everyone else, you are looking and wondering and trying to absorb what the environment is because you're growing in it. So it's a natural wanting of design or curiosity, basically. So I always had a thought of what is this or what is my surroundings? And I came to know a few things about the city itself. Of course, Philadelphia is a city that by all means can be described as the foundation or the beginning of America. And in order to put some clarity on that, I tried to do researching and then try to find out what we were. And
Was that research reading primarily, or was that interviewing people? Or?
no, it was just personal thinking.
Okay,
So,
okay.
no particular, purpose for doing it. It's just an interest that I have to take on to this. I've been writing Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, John Jay, all these personalities is identified in the city to those who really look into what the city is. You can't really measure what's going on even now without realizing, understanding what was gendered here. How was things looked at and what way were they, if they were related or related to the present, how we looked at it, how we identified that they related. The emotional part of it is easy, but the insightful human side is much more challenging. Now they have it right in the city right now. Maybe some people may find this interesting. A society called the American Philosophical Society. Right in the South. It was started by Ben Franklin in 1743. And was attended by all of those that signed the Declaration of Independence, ultimately was voters of the Constitution, the Federalist Papers, all that stuff. It would be particularly enlightening to probably anyone, I would say, for them to look at the minds and the mindsets of these men, what they thought like, what they understood in themselves as persons, and what they compromised. I use that term. Because all the confusion you see in the world, I would say they've had a pretty wonderful engagement by virtue of the fact that they have influenced and touched all the countries in the world right now, America. But most people, they're so, when I was coming as a kid, I wasn't excited about it in particular things. I know that there was great interest and great curiosity in my mind about it. I just got to walk around Philadelphia and reading, seeing plaques on walls and places where historical things had taken place. Like that. This was years before they did all the fancy, attractive stuff now. But if you look at the city now, no one is giving anyone explanations and can or feel very, I should say, satisfied. I'll use that term so that I'm not closing anybody out. To give references to the city's birth, what made it become what we're looking at now. If we don't know where to see it from, we can't understand the branch. So that's what that's me saying that. I mean, maybe some people small or wise than me and they understand it differently, but as a kid I saw that. So I saw the same thing we see now. I don't like terms like African American, Negro, Black, any of those terms, or Italians. I don't like those terms.
Were you always like that, or?
Well, I was always curious. I mean, much of what we all know and make we feel comfortable with it now could be as recent as this morning. As far as that goes. Because none of us really in charge, and none of us can anticipate the breath we just breathe, so certainly we can't anticipate the one they will breathe afterwards. It's all about Allah's grace. So the thing is that the curiosity about the environment, I think it's a natural thing that should occur and probably does occur to people. But how we respond to it and how we respond in a way wherein we continue to have enough confidence and enough strength humanly to endure and understand that we're growing here, to see this growth, you know.
How did that curiosity eventually take you to Islam?
But it didn't, I don't think it really took me to Islam. I think when it comes to Islam, I'm saying, I would say, that we may at this point, over there's mentioned and has been mentioned for years, we may be at the threshold of now entering into what we could call a real introduction to Islam in this world. I mean, for the whole world. I think that when we look at the life of Prophet Muhammad, so as we look at a man who really actually illustrated something so profound and so all times maybe not even looked at carefully enough. And that is that he's a human being, mortal person, who by his convictions, his acceptance of the kind of disciplinary handling that the Lord of the world placed upon him, he became a model example, not by anything that he himself was so consciously aware of or perpetrated of, it's the Lord of the world. And certainly we all agree that Allah does that to everything that lives. There's none of us that can anticipate nor are we in charge of our own selves, not even the 9 systems of our body. We have no remote control of none of it. Allah does all that himself. He don't have no helpers or associates. So the Prophet is a refined model example that we say, okay, Islam. Well, Islam is illustrated profoundly and certified to be so by Allah in his life, what his life is. And his life is very, very simple in many respects. I think it's been made in our minds a little complicated, but it's simple. I mean, he's more or less best, in my mind, described as someone who actually did the things that we need to learn about and need to do right on the job. It wasn't institutions or persons claiming to know or didn't know anything that would be able to compete or to even, I should say, debate any aspect of what was taking place in his life. Because on the job, right on the job, it was his job, Allah brought this about before. So, all times I think we may go at him as if it's, well, for lack of another term, as if it may be just easy. And it is easy, but easy to just go through it and adopt or just as we find ourselves comfortable doing.
A superficial reading.
Right, but his adoption of what Allah commanded him to do was not just that. The fortitude of this man had to be tremendous by Allah's grace because he had to take and accept things that he had never been told or called to do, and accept them with a full commitment, and no argument going on in his being. Now that is something to think about, because I don't perceive that I'm able to do anything near that. I don't perceive anybody else either, because my little toil and my own group makes me believe that no one can easily do that. And it wouldn't be right that they would be easy to do that, because if they could right, it's just easy to do it, then I don't think we'd have the mercy of Allah to save us. I don't think so.
Let me let's take a backtrack to, you said you went to Fletcher.
Well, Fletcher is an art school, and just for watercolor, stroke art, and oil painting. I used to paint stuff like that. I don't do it now.
Okay. All right. So before we got on air, we were talking about
Murder school.
No. We were talking about Imam Muhammad as from the Kuba school. It's now the Kuba school,
Oh.
International Muslim Brotherhood. And you said you remember them from 1958, 1959. So at this point, were you already in the Nation of Islam at this point?
No, I mean, no part of anything.
Okay, talk to me. But what was going on in Philly at that time? So
Well, it was just like it is now, basically. Probably wasn't as much to be seen as you might see now. But I'm sure that the city itself was basically what it is now. It still had the same controls, the same activities and stuff like that. That control was very violent in the town. For the most part, probably most people never noticed. See, because remember now, if you talk about people coming into a consciousness, we really talk about people coming into consciousness, the measure of consciousness that existed during that time, early years or some years back, last year, 10 years ago, whatever, you would say that consciousness maybe have become more vibrant today than it was then, you see. And the same thing we would say if we looked at the life of the prophet. We the same. So now, if our consciousness is helped and is really given aid and assistance by the example of the prophet, the offering of our development and our consciousness of human life, being conscious of our own self and as it relates to other things in creation, that should be enhanced. But the world was not doing as it's been ordered to do, and as exemplified in the life of the prophet Muhammad. So it's not doing that. He is told to convey something. And to convey it, he had to do what? He had to accept it in total sense. And of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that he did it, so we know that. So conveying it, he did do. Whether we cipher off from it anything or we enlighten by any aspect of it, doesn't take away from the fact that he did convey it. But if we see that he's the conveyor or the one who Allah chose to convey this message, that means we are to be those, if we follow him, to have an attitude that is of conveyance. We want to convey this message, not my message, not somebody else's message, not what somebody has garnished up and institutionalized, but this sample that Allah says is authentic. So in that way, I feel that my experiences as a child, my mother and father, left me free of being easily subjected to anybody's opinions and stuff like that. I always thought, hey, don't take anybody's word for it. Try as much as you can yourself. And I think that every human being has that option. So I've never been given to, I met people, I've met a lot of people in life, and hopefully I'll meet some more. But at the same time, I'm never impressed by what someone else, I mean, I'm comfortable with letting them be as they are, because also was an order that's given to the prophet Muhammad. You convey this to him, look, you ain't in charge. You can't make it. It's a compulsion. You don't have the right. You feel personally independent or feel indifferent about it. Whatever, if they accept you, if they don't worry about that. That's what Allah is telling him. That's my understanding of what it's like. So I'm saying that I thank Allah that during the course I reflect on life, look, struggling and just the sense of not knowing to a point of becoming suddenly aware of things. I feel that security that I think Allah puts on every human being. I am not persuaded, and I've never been influenced by any individuals that I would choose their way. Not even with my parents, stuff like that. And they didn't require that. They required that.
Were your parents still alive when you decided to be a Muslim?
Well, I was on the for years before they died.
Okay. Talk to me about that. What was that? What was that like? Was it when you became a Muslim in this city? Was that something popular? Was it something rejected?
I think that, as I said before, I always tend to keep that clear in mind. I think that Islam came to Philadelphia like it came to America. It was not here, and how it came is probably one of the stories to be told by many different entries. But Islam came to America. It came to Philadelphia. And so sometimes people ask me, well, if someone did ask me, in fact, not too long ago, in regards to Philadelphia, this is not, I was outside of Philadelphia when he said this, so I'm not saying to put any kind of sneer toward the city, but they would prompt me and say, oh man, what's going in Philadelphia, man. Blah, blah. So one of the brothers that was there said, this is Champagne, he's from Philadelphia. So they turned to me. What's going on in Philadelphia, man? All this is going on. I said, I'm listening. So I said, they were gunned, powered up by the nonsense that's going on over the whole country, but Philadelphia seems at this point holding
Gun violence.
peak. Any kind of craziness of the city's life. So I said, well, let's think about it like this. I said, Islam came to America, it came to Philadelphia as well. Because the statement they said is, how is this happening when there's so many Muslims there? I said, well, Islam came to America, it came to Philadelphia. But how many Muslims in Philadelphia? Only a lot. Now I was just saving myself and put a question maybe, but that was my answer. But see, the point is that I think that the world we lived in, the world we experienced, say the world I was coming as a youngster, it was geared to take us somewhere, not that they knew they would take us. I don't think the world knew it was going. Anyone who would go away from the common sense evidence that Allah has put in this universe and go somewhere else, they don't know where they're going.
So I'm gonna press you a little bit because this is important to me. And I do know that you said something quite profound, and that is sometimes we can't come to a realization this morning. And so that's what I'm gonna talk about, because that's what I believe now.
Yes.
And I can't, obviously, if I'm talking about who I was 20 years ago or 30 years ago, it's not based on the understanding that I got this morning. So I was a different person at that time.
Mm-hmm.
For example, when I came to Islam in 1993, the way that I talked to my mother about it then is not the way that I would talk to my mother about it today. And that's who I was then, and this is who I am now. Same thing with my father. But so when you came to Islam, and that was something that you talked to your parents about, it's not going to be based on your understanding of who you are today.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine, I mean, just from the stories, not about you specifically, from the stories I've heard that people had gone through who are leaving the religion of their parents. I mean, because, and Allah talks about that in the Quran, that it was for some people, it was difficult. It was difficult for them to have those conversations and interactions with their parents. So that personal touch is what I'm looking for. How did you handle that?
Well, I know it was never a problem. Because
Okay.
my parents was like this. My father's grandfather, he had a master lamb who was in Jordan. So he was like one of the most respected persons in the community that he lived in. He had the land. He built the church. He didn't become a minister, but he built the church for the community. He formed a cemetery. Is there all this right now? For the community. He gave the land for all this to be done. But he never imposed on anybody anything. Because we had already, remember these people are coming from a distressed position anyway, our people. So you don't want to impose things on people. And in Islam, we know we're not supposed to do that. We can't put compulsory measures, be it by force of hand or some manipulation of mind. We can't do that. Because if we do that, we'll interfere with really the majesty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He knows the unseen in the hearts of men. And we try to force it. But this world has had a way and had an opportunity because Shaitan was given respite. And they have followed their course. So they have forced things on people and made them think things that they may not even realize they're thinking, you see. Well, I'm saying my experiences was different to me. I didn't know that. I probably know more about it right now than I thought about 2 weeks ago. I'm saying, what is that? My parents never made me or even my sisters, any of us, think that we had to adhere to anything other than being truthful and being right and being fair and being just. Don't seek advantage. Don't hold petty grudges and jealousy and be yourself. You know, that kind of stuff. Not even being And when someone acted out of order, disrespectful, if they didn't physically attack you, don't get so excited about that you join in the same thing that they're saying. Don't do that. You only do things as appropriate. Now, I don't know where they drew conclusions from, but those conclusions that they had that was in our household was very much helpful to me because I didn't want whatever I chose to do was not going to be a thing about them feeling like, oh, and I think for a lot of them, I wouldn't choose a wild thing anyway. If I would choose some wild, I guess they would have a different look. But they knew that, well, look, he's grown up, this is, he let you grow. So when I first heard mentionings of Islam, and it had been floating around for a while because some of them very close friends of mine were living the same neighborhood, we talked all the time, and even heard samples of things that I had never heard, and they didn't tell me. They ain't never said it about them. So years went by before I even heard that. They even heard it before. They said to me, oh, I heard it before. Oh, I never heard that. So anyway, when I heard Islam, I said to my father, I asked him what he know of Jewish things. He said, okay. There's a lot of things. And my father was not, and he was his father. They were not people who went into church and they were people who were interested in people, but not going into church claiming that God sit on the side of the bed. They didn't talk about dumb stuff like that, which you can hear in mega churches today. People talking dumb like that. But the thing is, that just wasn't their way. So I never had none of that to be confronted. So when I talked to my father about this, matter of fact, I took him with me when I first heard about the Nation Islam. And I went to one of the meetings, and he wasn't with me. And as I go in the meeting, I talked to him, I said, "That's look here, I want you to go somewhere with me." So I took my father and one of my sisters to the meeting. I didn't say that, I didn't tell him what I had thought. And he said, "That's it." So on the way back to them, I said, "My father says, Dad, what do you think?" He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "What do you think about what's being said?" And of course, at that time, things were being blasted to try to take these, I guess, from the family, women's daughters or whatever, but trying to point out how the injury of the people was highlighted. It was necessary. I think it was necessary that woman came to me about it. But I didn't know, put little about it at the time. My father said to me, he said, "Son, listen, is you coming out there about this world?" He said, "All of them are pretty the same." He said, "Listen, you asked me about them?" He said, "You got a lot of good points. Remember this, there's a lot of room for error." That's what he said. That's exactly what he said. Got a lot of good points. Remember this, there's a lot of room for error.
Tell me about, so this is not something I'm familiar with, and I'm sure many people of my generation who just didn't live through that, they wouldn't understand what were these meetings. So are we talking about you're going to a temple, or are they meeting at somebody's house?
When I went there, it was a temple. It was supposed to be a temple. It was a building.
South Philly or somewhere?
No. The one I went to was West Philadelphia.
Okay.
I don't even know the building, probably not. It was 5207 Haverford Avenue.
Really?
5207 Haverford Avenue.
Okay. Okay. My grandfather, my great grandfather owned a house at 54th and Haverford.
Oh, yeah.
Since the early 1900s, probably. So
That's the neighborhood.
yeah. So I know the neighborhood very well. Yeah, I know the neighborhood very well. Okay. So
So I went there.
207 Ave.
But see, strangely enough, And this is me summarizing, reflecting upon experience. And I'll say immediately, all of history as we've known in the world, when we come to Islam, as Allah revealed in the Prophet Muhammad, all of the history of the world, Christians, Muslims, and Jews, all of them, the history is going to become irrelevant. The past history is going to be totally irrelevant, and should be, because there's just that much confusion in that development stage, that period of time where Shaitan had was orchestrating his influence and whispers in the Roman people. That Islam would have to make all that irrelevant to where Allah has been. And that I see is going, I think that we're moving toward anything else. So I don't even really find the past being anything other than a view to nostalgia or something. You know what I mean? It don't have any meaning. What we do have to be committed to and really driving that is what we see right immediately in the immediate parts that we see now is more relative to our person. We see ourselves a little better than when it was those years where there was a scattered type of definition game going on, scattered definitions and all that stuff. So I don't ever enjoy talking about history like that. That history is nonsense.
No,
You know?
let me
But
take
I
a
will-
minute to
I will-
appreciate that.
Do a best I can.
No, let me take a minute to appreciate that point because I understand. I believe I understand. You know what you are saying here. I do think, however, that those lessons of the past allow us to avoid making some of the mistakes that have been made in the past. And I think that that's one of the benefits personally that I get from people who are older than me, who have a lot more experience than me, who have been through certain things. It's almost as if they, and I'm using this term very loosely, it's almost as if they can see the future because of the past. There's almost, and I ain't talking about superpowers. I'm saying that they can draw conclusions about what the results of A, B, and C will be because of their experience in the past. If that knowledge is not passed down to a next generation, then I feel like we're bound to either make the same mistakes or not be as effective as we may possibly be able to be. All of that, of course, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's decree. So that's without a doubt. You know, at the same time, I do think there's benefit in history, especially for the people who are doing the work and the people who did the work. And that's the way that I view it. I mean, I know that leading a community is work because it's not just about you and your family anymore. You've got so many other things and people and situations that you have to be concerned about. So, I appreciate that history is not something that you particularly want to deal with. And so I'm saying I appreciate you taking the time to still give us some of this history.
Yeah, but I do want to deal with it.
Okay.
And it's effectively, literally, I want to do it. I agree with you saying in the way you described that. But then I move myself clearly to the point that, well, why this history when we have the Quran? And in the Quran, Allah has given us all the phonics here to let us know to what degree history is even important. So that means that why don't we just move here and lead this jump? You know what I mean?
Yes.
I think that's my, way I observe it in the spirit of my thought. But now I understand what you're saying about references to, and I make as many references as anyone else in my thought process as to what is going on in our business. And by Allah's grace, my memory is pretty good. So I do it all the time. It's a constant thing. I think that human beings should do that. But I don't necessarily bring that in front of anything if I can see that it's not necessarily. Now, this is a factor of something that we clarify. As you may remember, I just spoke about the American Philosophical Society. And if we start talking about the history of America. I know a little bit about the history of America. I know a little bit about the history of the world. I mean, because I've had the opportunity to place my interest in those things at earlier times. And by the grace of my Father, it never left my mind. So I know about this. I know if you ask me what was the disposition of manners and behavior of Thomas Jefferson versus Alexander Hamilton or James Madison and John Jay, while the Supreme Court became the Supreme Court, who first, what happened, all that kind of stuff. I know all about that too. That's history. But I think it's junk. You know why I think it's junk? Because they were trying to do something without being mindful of what was already there in the most qualitative way for one to be guided by. The Quran is in the world. See, so now, even when it comes up, the Muslims who were there were conveyors of the same. And the Prophet Muhammad certainly did not fail in his obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we have to convey that too, in evidence in our own character and manner. So the world, all people, should be looking at history in a very particular way. Understand? That's why I said we need to move the jump and get right to what Allah's asking. Because if Allah, who's the one who decides, he can decide how he please. If he decides today, how many of us will have anything to stand on? He tells us to be aware of that. You know what I mean? So I'm saying it though. So yeah, the history of I've seen some exciting pages in history. They make movies about things. Some of the movies are not as exciting as what I've seen. But at the same time, that's really the jump part of people's society. But particularly referring to the fact of history, I think it is important, and this is the city who have come on it. And I think we can look at some small things, maybe will help some of the people recognize where they're erring, where they're making mistakes with themselves by just looking at those histories. Remember at one time, Presidency City here, this city was, or the state for that matter, was owned by William Penn. The British did not have jurisdiction here. So that accounts for the reason why they could assemble here, sit down and discuss various things they thought should be changed or things they could fix before themselves in their hands to oppose King George III. If you look at it and study it carefully, you may decide that maybe it was not a revolution. Because a revolution clearly and does suggest the mind it was for the upliftment of mankind to have revolution. So this here may not have been a revolution, may have been not just a high level coup. One trying to make transition and possess the power of the one that they feel is opposed or that they are opposed and they feel is suppressed by. And remember, wars are fought for those reasons. They fight wars to take over this country so they can add that to their empire, thinking and all that kind of stuff. And in that whole web of doing this, they interfere with the natural course of human sanity and security. They don't see that. These are the things that can be seen and understood if the history is studied properly. But see, as long as we are looking at it and trying to make this one to blame, maybe this is the blame, or he's to blame, this one the worst, you'll stay in that valley of darkness. The whole thing is all of us is one human life. We're not a variety of any species, we are one human life. And these types of discussions were held by these men who sit and talk. They have to take careful view of how, well, we're not talking about species or various natures the same. We're talking about flowers and animals or whatever. We're talking about human life is just one life itself. Now, Franklin knew that and said it. Alexander Hamilton, he knew that. He said it. There's absolute words of them saying that. I mean, Franklin, if you read some of Franklin's work, you say he cited the Shahada and knew that he was citing it the way he worded while he was saying it. And I'm sure that there were many people who knew Islam, knew of Islam, knew of the Quran, long before we were born. So the thing is, I don't think that when Allah revealed that Quran, I don't think nobody on this earth could find themselves not being drawn and touched by it, even if they had no idea it exists. because the book itself is directed by Allah's words to the very nature of the creature He created and the governance of that nature and what's best serving for its governance. It's in the Quran. So I don't think nobody was immune to it. I don't think nobody is. So looking at history and looking at it like that, you say, okay, what would be the course of action of those who are trying to defend an error that they made? Human nature tells us that once we suffer embarrassment or shame, and so is the illustrated steps it takes to understand this in the life of our father Adam. Maybe Salam is right there. Once that happens, we do what? We try to deal with ourselves having arrived at that particular junction, and that particular junction in the areas of our father Adam Islam is that he disobeyed or disregarded what Allah has said. So when we make a mistake, there's embarrassment and shame. If we don't address that embarrassment and shame with a replenishment of truth and clarity, then it goes into a merger. Now, if embarrassment and shame goes into a merger, it's going to produce anger. The anger should go to the person who's disappointed himself. He should be looking at it from that position. But if he doesn't, then he points it out to somebody else. It's your fault. Or it's these people's fault. So you see how the division is, it's not a hidden thing. It happens just like that. So here is his fault, not mine. I'm covering me, pointing at you, and saying at the same time, not realizing what Shaitan wants me to do. I'm saying you're different. I'm saying I'm different than you. Shaitan only wants that. He wants us to think of ourselves in that way, because we think like that, he can hit the roll. He can't roll otherwise. So with that in mind, with that in mind, I look at history, all the history, and I say, oh, okay, I'm looking at the conduct of various ones. Now, I don't know anybody that I didn't, when I had the opportunity, let me have a thought in that way. I look at their conduct. I don't know any persons I look at their conduct, their attitude, how they perceive or claim that they perceive things, how they respond to things. I've always been like that. Because my mother was like that. She was like that in the most amazing sense. I've never seen anybody calmer than my mother about handling whatever problem came that she was just that way. And I said, man, I mean, it was always impressive. I didn't know what it meant as a child growing up. When I'd be sitting at the table, she'd making pies and stuff. She'd be talking about different things and telling me things, you know. And I remember one day she told me, she said, I was about 9, 11, 10 like that. I was always telling her what I was going to do for her, like be a man and all that. I grown up going to do this, I mean, just child talk. Most of it was really due to me wanting to see if I could get that bowl with the better understanding for the red pie and stuff like that. Because it's sitting there while she's doing it, the bowl will get, and then they can get. I mean, I'm just being realistic. I remember that. But, and I never told her that I'm sure she do that too. But she told me, she said, son, learn how to think quietly. You'll be able to act more effectively. They never left my mind. Think quietly means use your head. You can complete many things in your own mind that when you really take to do, you already know the answers. That to me, presently, in recent years later, was quite descriptive to me when I looked at Adam in the garden. Those kind of things. And if nobody discussed those kind of things, I couldn't discuss like we're doing right now. Because people are so entangled with stuff, you're going to get classified. If you start saying things that they don't readily have no feel or understanding of, you're going to get classified. And in this country here, you're going to get exposed. And I know that in my lifetime, there was instances and times and standing to be thinking a certain way, showing that you're doing it in the natural sense. A lot of this guy, you don't even know that you causing no turbulence anywhere. But people can be saying, man, this joker here, man. And many of our people obviously suffer that. This joker here, man, he's a threat, or he is, if he shares that or whatever, it can cause this. And they have reason to believe it will be disturbing and interest to them. And they dealt with them like that. So we're going to look at the heinous way and brutalness that we suffer to people. We realize that, yeah, there was those people who did that to us, just human beings just like us. but driven by ignorance and ambition of something that they themselves are saying is thinking could be possible without registering clearly the reality of the one that's God and Lord, the sun, moon, and stars, everything's right here. This is how this comes about. So we got worlds now that came into being because of that type of thinking. And we have to know that we're going to be fair about it, and we're going to look at the wonders of the human being, recognize the wonders of the lost one island, and recognize the message. There's one message to the whole humanity as a mercy to the creation itself that he gave about how so we have to say, hey, wait a minute. As terrible as this situation looked, as a human being doing that, his condition obviously is something to wonder about. But even that allows us to make those things plain too. But see, I believe that the Muslim, in real terms, today has the greatest opportunity, but also has the greatest challenge. And certainly, with the greatest opportunity should come the greatest challenge.
Challenges and responsibility, or
Challenges and the whole package, everything that will be the concern. The Muslim is in the front line, receiving those particular questions or debates, whatever you want to call it, and giving the first opportunity to respond. They got that. I mean, that's Allah's virtue. He is right in front of us. But see, again, we know what Allah says, how He tells us to understand about division and all the kind of. We make a mention of how division comes about, but a person not being adequately in compliance with addressing what is naturally going on in his own self, and how he gets placed in some of that stuff like that. That's a natural fact. And so, groupings and gatherings and saying separations and people thinking different, and no one really been willing to take and say, look, wait a minute, hold it. And when it's Muslims, it says, clearly in the Quran, Allah says, settle your differences by mutual consultation, which means consulting, talking to each other, based on something that we mutually agree is real. He's of our words. So I can't have a reason, I can't take a reason any position against my brother, even if we don't think the same way. I still can't do that. I would be wrong to think I'm thinking better or I think I know. That's ridiculous. Because I know, well, I said mutual, and mutuality means he is first. That's Tawheed. We got to make sure that we don't forget who the Lord of the world is and who it is that causing all of us to live, making us have the arguments and whatever else we have. And what He offers us an opportunity to come out of the argument triumph, as opposed to enemy and stuff like that. It's all real. The world, if the Muslim starts to put those things in, I'm just suggesting, but I know Allah's God. I'm not saying that I know that to be absolute, but Allah knows, and He blesses what He pleases into humanity. If the Muslim made an effort like that, it'll change this world. We won't change it, Allah will change it, but we will be qualifying ourselves to receive what He said He will grant. He said He won't change everybody's existence, but it changes in itself. That's got to be an evident flowing thrust that we're struggling to change within ourselves. Allah will bless us. But, as long as we just, going around trying to see if we can get along instead of get ahead, we want to get along with each other so we can have more extended time from our own imagination. We'll get ahead of each other. Instead of doing what He said about mutual consultation and get ahead together. See what I'm saying? That's what I'm talking about.
I do. I want to pick up on a point you mentioned that you said that there are certain thoughts that may come to a person's mind that they may have to keep to themselves and think quietly. Because if you were to speak them, right, you'd be classified and put into a category. Now, part of the purposes of this particular interview too is there are academic purposes behind it. There is a correction of narrative. There is a preservation of narrative, which I think is very important. You lived through a time where classification was a lot more pronounced in the Muslim community, I think, than it is now. And that was the very classic classification of, Sunni Islam and the Nation of Islam. You were there at the convergence of that, right? I mean, you were alive through that time period, you witnessed it. I think that it's important for people who lived at that time, especially in this city, to talk somewhat about that. And I'll give you some points of references that I think are critical. I know you're keenly aware of the Holmesburg riots and what happened there. And based on the story that's told, that wasn't necessarily a Sunni Nation of Islam fight that caused the bigger riots, but that's part of the story. There is the 1975 or 1976 mass conversion of Nation of Islam coming over to Sunni Islam, and taking Imam Wardi Muhammad rahimahullah as a leader at that particular stage. I believe, and Allah knows best, that your path was a little different. It wasn't, and it's interesting to hear you talk about how your parents raised you. That you weren't just going to be a follower of anybody just like that, blind allegiance. So perhaps that was different from some of the other people who did have more of a blind allegiance. I really think it's important to talk about that.
Well, it is, because see, to think quietly is to be as inherent to truth and validate as you possibly can. Because if you have thoughts in your head that's raggedy and junk, it manifests in your actions. So to think quietly gives you the opportunity to act more effectively. Now me, I never subscribe to one, I'm sure anybody that knows me, they will never hear me advocating, reporting, or saying, they never heard me saying, I'm Sunni, I'm Shia, I'm Wahhabi. You never heard me say that. I'm Muslim. Because in the Quran is what it says. So I don't put nothing in front of myself. That's just my thinking. Now, I've been thinking that way for I don't know how long I've been thinking that way about it and everything, but the things I never said it. It was a time to say that might have been a real conflict or whatever with many people. We see that every day. We learn these things all the time. And still, you must reconcile in a way where it keeps you able to go forward. The Holmesburg riots, I was not there when Holmesburg riots took place. I don't know any real particulars about the riot. I went to Holmesburg after that. I was arrested. I went to Holmesburg. All that arrest was well, that's all part of the work of those who I couldn't say in detail like I can now. Obviously, it was to oppose something that they envisioned or thought they saw. It was opposition to that. Because I wasn't guilty of their crimes. If my parents did behave themselves to take education to the best of their ability, kept us apart in ways that I didn't know why. I had no idea when I was growing as a child, but my mind didn't go towards stupidity like that. Stupid stuff. How do you do something stupid? Obviously, you don't see it as stupid. That's how you do a stupid thing. You don't see it as stupid. If you have any feel for something stupid, you're going to be somewhat sensitive, yes, draw back from it. If you're not, if you're unaware of nothing is prompting you to have a curiosity or a sensitivity about it, you can fall very much in the victim of it. Go back to our father. He heard the words of Allah, but he had not experienced any actions or any thoughts that brought him into motion with that command. That was a mistake. So we're not blaming him, we're saying how mistakes happen. How do you make these mistakes? Allah don't leave anything in no puzzle position, it's all very clear, you see? So what I'm saying is, the incidentals where Muslims are, I put it on the church, where people were clashing and having arguments. For whatever reason, I always saw those arguments. Nobody did argue like that. That's why, like the brothers who was when I was in the Nation of Islam, the brothers that wasn't in the Nation of Islam, many of them, most of them know me. They know me from that time period. They don't know me to ever be a person who disregarded another person. Well, just act up. I'm not influenced by what you're doing. I think I see something different, but I'm not at difference with you. And I always seen them as being my brothers. Reason for that, even strongly supported and giving respect to the fact of what Elijah Muhammad used to say. He used to say, you must remember this, your brothers first. He's talking about the people, his people. You're going to have to be brother first. He told the ones that was ministers, you're a brother minister. Don't go to your brother forgetting because you say you're the minister, you say you're the captain, you say you're the lieutenant. Don't talk to him like that. You're his brother first. Align all that authoritarianism and foolishness with something that's going to save you from disgracing yourself. You know what I'm saying? So that's the kind of language he taught. But people don't know this. They don't even know that. Man. They don't know nothing about him. But he was a guy who was just trying to do what he could in the best ways he could. Now, I can say much of what he said in many respects could be really aiding to the people right now. One of the things he said was this. Matter of fact, that's some last thing he said. He said, don't worry about what God has given anybody. You do something with what God has given you. Now, that's a very common sense statement. And profound. So now, if a man tell you something like that, what kind of man? Do you think he's some kind of a nut? Or do you see the reality of what the people, nuts, can't put together words like that? I mean, it don't come out of the mouth of no fools. People who talk like that, think like that, they're not foolish people. Even though he could, went to third grade school, you can't call this man a fool. He talk like that. Here's a man who was able to say, I mean, when I first heard something about Elijah Muhammad said this, he was talking in one of the lectures. I might be able to call it in real time. See, it was one of he made a record album. That's what it was, a record album. And he was talking about the white or the Caucasian world and the way of the matter, how they behave, particularly toward us. And he said, how do you get in trouble with a guy like Allah? He said, he created you. He knows what you think, what you will do, what you want to do. He saw you running from him before he created you. He said, wow, what kind of man say something like that, man? That's enough to let anybody, this man can't be no fool, man. I don't know what he know or don't know. But that is not enough you shake off and say, that's a clown statement. That's no clown statement. Because that should register true to anybody's mind. If otherwise we can't justify claiming that we understand full calm or the distinctions between right and wrong, we can't justify none of that if we can't see that every human being is affected by what he do and don't do. And he has to, and he does, give account at some point. He does, hopefully he can find himself giving account with himself, and therefore enacting in the way of taking what Allah has given to try to heal, then to wait till the day, account what he's ill, now got to give account, and faintly remembering, being brought into remembrance, understanding faint weakness. It's just crazy, not to work here. So my whole thing was, as I was, and I didn't particularly have this discussion with members of the Nation of Islam in all details, but the same matter of approach was all. I think I always had a good relationship with everybody, Nation of Islam, whatever. But a good relationship because I was always wanting to be as exact and as correct as possible. And definitely he just. I was not a guy that was a weak guy. People didn't walk over me. So I was taught not, long they didn't attack me physically, they wouldn't know how strong I was anyway. And praise God, I didn't get his ankles. You know what I mean? So he saved me from ruin. But the thing is, when you look at these things, we have to bring it down to terms, all terms. And say, hey man, this ain't about nothing imaginary. This is real. And that little child is growing up. As Elijah Muhammad just said, he said, that little child, don't talk to him in no baby talk. The brain that he has now, he'll have the same brain when he's 100 years old. So talk to him with words and things that he can use in the course of life, and not the boo-boo baby talk nonsense, but the paper talk. But it makes all the sense in the world. Who can condemn that kind of English? But of course, it was thing. He didn't know the Quran. He told everybody, but he read it. He read it all the time. But he didn't know it. He didn't know the Arabic and all of that. But then all the things we know about language and everything else is telling to us today different things that we can understand that we didn't understand then. You know, I mean, how many people would know that the first translation of the Quran into English by a Muslim was Yusuf Ali? Yusuf Ali was the person who did that. Before that, no Muslim would ever transfer the Quran to English. So, you know, you learn all that. That means something. When you start research, you look past that and look at that. That's why I come to the conclusion. All those histories like that, we can just hold that later. We do that. Let's make that a dessert. Let's get to the full meal. And let that be dessert. We may not even want no dessert. After that, I mean, leave the dessert on the table. But that's my way of looking at things. And that's why I look at, I mean, I meet a lot of people. I know a lot of people. I know a lot of people that's in many different levels of the society, whatever. When you talk about economics, business, and you know, and I got a lot of friends. But you know what? I talk to them just like that. I mean, I know a lot of people, Caucasian people, as we would call them. I don't like using names like that. I talk to them the same way I'm telling you about this. That's how I talk to them. And I haven't seen any of them not become my friend. And I've been on the Caribbean with people in yachts and stuff like that, and building the Caribbean, you know, right? And talking to them the same way I'm talking now. And they never, were delighted to hear some clarity to ones in their mind. And the thing, that ain't because of me, it's because I got enough faith in Allah that I'm not afraid of what nobody else thinks. I don't care what they think. If they humiliate me with their insults, they did that to Abraham. They humiliated him with all their insults. Allah told him, don't worry about that. No, don't worry, don't get it. It ain't personal. It ain't personal. That's his message. He couldn't take it personal, and he didn't. That's a beautiful thing. But when you look at Brother Man, you look at the fact that people are so engaged with ignorance in this world. They don't even remember that we came here in chains. We were people who were brought here in chains. Before the world, we were brought here in chains. For us to think that nobody in the world knew we were brought here in chains is ridiculous. For us to think that there was somebody in that some dark corner that didn't know it is ridiculous. They brought us in chains. That means people came to this country escaping Paris and chains and all the blue treatment and all that going in various countries. We celebrated that. I've been on ships in this town, where they had memorial references to people who came here from other countries. I've been on those ships, to the little hors d'oeuvre parties and stuff. I've shared that with them. And I say, look, I'm looking at it and I say, it's good, man. I didn't say, you came in like that, I'm just thinking to remember what I know how my people came here and I'm feeling bad. No. They were escaping, getting away from something terrible. That's the way they came. That ain't the way we came. So common sense should tell us that if we came in chains, the first thing that should come from one or normal mind is, it may be if we didn't want to come. And if we didn't want to come, it may be we were satisfied where we were at. And if we were satisfied where we was at, it may be our traditions, our language, our religion,